Okay, we're going to get right into this. There's no way that I can attend to everything, but I try to get to at least the big piece of it and what I see that this is setting us up for again, the next 3 months. So ingress charts are for anything, basically. I use them for any occasion, but generally astrologers refer to ingress charts and are talking about seasonal markers. So the equinoxes and the solstices. And because I'm in the Northern Hemisphere, I'm going to be seeking here to how this orients in the Northern Hemisphere, but it's, of course, the opposite in the Southern. It's not any less valid. It's just going to take a lot longer for me to get through it if I have to repeat everything for both hemispheres. So please bear with me with that. So for me, the seasonal markers or the solstices and equinoxes are direct Sun-Earth transmissions because they're all related directly to the sun's position relative to the celestial equator, which is the midline of the Earth, right? It's the Earth's equator projected into space. And these seasonal ingress charts are like mini portals into a time capsule of the geosolar year. They make them more bite-sized. They're like phases within the annual solar cycle. And they represent the subtone of that quarter of the year, helping to break up the greater cycles into manageable chunks. So for me, it seems very helpful to look at the next 3 months based on the ingress. And these are cardinal ingresses. So again, markers of different seasons, which have an energy behind them that we can use and work with to help. They're action-oriented, cardinal, right? And so especially with this equinox, all bets are off. We're in the Libra equinox. So all things are literally equal. This is when the sun is passing the Earth's celestial equator, where light and dark are the same, day and night. In the Northern Hemisphere, we are increasing in the darkness relative to the light. In the Southern Hemisphere, of course, we are increasing in light versus the dark. Saturn is exalted in Libra. And Saturn is very big in this chart too. Saturn is retrograde, still squaring the nodal axis, okay? Saturn exalted in Libra is a chance for clearing the slate of past karmas, which must happen if we want to move into a future free from orientation to false security and safety to identify ourselves, and into a future of unleashed creative freedom. So this is Saturn retrograde, square Uranus retrograde, and the North Node. This chart is helping to prepare us to access more of our innate life force to meet the unknown. How do we do that? By meeting ourselves, catching up with ourselves where we haven't wanted to. That's what karma is, really. Karma is just allowing ourselves to catch up with ourselves in our own wake. And any planet that's retrograde is an opportunity to do that. It literally is, astronomically, when a planet becomes seemingly moving backwards in our skies, it's where the Earth's orbit around the sun meets up and comes into alignment with the orbit and its speed of rotation around the sun. So we literally sync up. So again, it's a way then you can see for us to catch up with ourselves. We are so outwardly focused, outwardly driven, we don't ever give ourselves time to receive, which is especially what the North Node in Taurus is asking for us, and Chiron in Aries, where we've really, really overdone and wounded and burnt out our drive to keep going and going outside of ourselves. We've exhausted that and we're becoming so polarized as a result. So we now need to really, really receive, catch up with ourselves. And as we do that, however we do, whatever our practice is to do that, we are saying to the universe, to our higher selves, to all our guides and every being that's wanting to help us right now, wow, this person is really wanting something more. They are willing to break out of their habits and patterns, deal with their fears around it, Saturn, and courageously choose to go into the dark, the unknown anyway, with an open heart, open mind, and an innocence. There's a lot in this chart that speaks of this kind of innocence, and I'm not going to go into too much of that. Oh, maybe I will in a little bit. But basically, the more available we are to go into the unknown, not knowing, the more that we are going to be supported in undergoing whatever the initiations are that we need to go through, indicated here by Moon and Ceres. Okay, I'll get to that in a little bit too. So it's important to take note of this because, well, it's important to take notice of Mercury and the Sun here. Mercury is right there with the Sun, but 30 arc minutes from the Cazimi, where he is literally at the same degree and minute as the Sun. Mercury is just finishing his evening star phase, about to begin a whole new cycle with the Sun. So this is Mercury asking us to let go of everything we thought we knew about relating and polarity, to be rebirthed into this new paradigm. And before we can get on with the task of reconciling polarity without, in the outer Libra, we need to reconcile it within. Virgo is the way to do that. Venus is in Virgo. Mercury is going to be retrograding back into Virgo. Virgo is a sign of self-accuracy. So we're being asked to look at what it is for us uniquely to be in relationship. And to be in relationship with whom first? Ourselves, right? Venus as Virgo as the sign, archetypally right underneath the culminating sign before we get to the upper hemisphere. It's the culmination of our self-identity. And there's so much that can be spoken of about Virgo. It's so underestimated and misunderstood. And this isn't a teaching or a class on Virgo, but I will mention this. I see Virgo as the sign of the initiate. And I have broken up the different decans, which are the different, each sign, of course, has 30 degrees. And within each sign, they broken out into 10 degrees each, which they call the decans or the decans. For me, I have lightly identified or have offered a certain quality, Virgo quality within each of the decans. For me, the first decan is relinquish. The second decan is hone, H-O-N-E. And the third is offer. And weaving throughout all the decans is devotion, discernment, and heartful presence. Now, the first decan, well, I won't go into the first decan yet. But let's just say that this Virgo Venus here, again, is bringing us into the relationship with ourselves, how we've self-identified, where we have made ourselves less than. Mercury is the top dog of this quarter, considering he's dispositor of both Mars in Gemini and Venus in Virgo. And each of them will undergo their own respective transformations during this quarter. Venus is going to be at the 22nd of October at the 29th degree of Libra, and Mars on December 7th at 16 degrees of Gemini, where he's only right now moving direct in 1 degree from that point in this Ingress chart. So Mercury is moving at his fastest retrograde, setting the stage for the increasingly accelerated pace of the remainder of this year. And what's super interesting about this chart too is Mercury at his fastest, but at this place of equalness, like a reset, as I mentioned before. There's a sense of time within timelessness that is the hallmark of this whole quarter to me, this whole season. We're going to see that again with Venus fastest direct when she's conjunct the sun, but also in the liminal space of transmutation in the underworld. Mars, fastest retrograde opposite the sun, also in the liminal retrograde period, but moving his fastest. So this period of speed within this liminal space. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a video of, let's say, a car that's moving so fast around a racetrack where it's sped up that it looks at one point, it gets so fast that it looks like it's stationary. That's the idea here internally. And the speeding up is one way of accentuating and accelerating deep polarization for the evolutionary purpose of forcing us to find our center, forcing us to come back to where amidst the chaos, seeming chaos, and change, we can find stability. And stability is not going to be static. That even stability will change. And this is the hallmark of this initiation, of our human initiation right now. And with Venus as the sign of the initiate, and Ceres as a modern ruler of Venus, right there with the moon, asking us, are we available to become our own initiates, to initiate ourselves into places of deeper levels of safety that we couldn't have known or foreseen before? And where are we still playing small and clinging to something outside of ourselves to give us solace or comfort, or to blame where we don't want to take accountability and catch up with ourselves from the choices that we've made in the past? Not to blame ourselves or to make ourselves wrong, but again, to heartfully presence and love ourselves there. Mercury is asking us, how willing are we to change the way we orient to relationship, to inner, outer, subjective, objective, right? As ruler of duality, Mercury is the seed degree of the sign of polarity. So our understanding and relationship with duality is commensurate with our level of integration of polarity. Polarity here being a spectrum. Venus and Mars being the perfect examples, the ultimate examples of polarity. And polarity doesn't need to be neutralized or neutered, which is such a tempting thing to do. The tension of polarity, we are so accustomed and we've been so brainwashed into choosing comfort above all else that we literally want to castrate or neuter ourselves from the tension of polarity. But what is that ultimately doing? It's cutting ourselves off from the creative life force that lives and wants to breathe and be and acknowledge and allow us uniquely to create as the being that we are in this body, this time, this flesh, this blood. So polarity is tension. How we orient to polarity is the key. Do we try to neuter or castrate it, or do we find our way through by remembering that as earthlings on this earth plane, we are here as initiates. We are here to learn, to humble ourselves, Virgo, to learn the ways of earth, which is a constant balancing of, am I making myself too little for my moment? Am I making myself too much for my moment? Am I seeing myself as less than you? Am I making myself better than you? This constant moving target of where we can find balance in the chaos, balance in the uncertainty. This is our deep initiation. This is what this time period is asking of us. And any of us who are really, really choosing this initiation, to whatever degree we are available to be courageous in our exploration of that with a proper teacher, with a proper group, with our peers, with others who are also seeking this, we are going to find we have immeasurate support. And it's not about coming to some false state of harmony where there's no more discomfort and we have suddenly certainty. Being uncertain or getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, venturing into unknown territory is what Uranus with the North Node is telling us is the new path. How do we heartfully and creatively engage with life in the unknown, which is the nature of life? And Virgo also shows us that when we attend to the moment just as it is, no more, no less, no bells and whistles, we are then making ourselves available for reality, ultimate reality, Pisces, to come through in right amount into our being, into our knowledge, into our gnosis, so that we are then able to attend to the moment perfectly, Venus. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to acknowledge and be honest about where we're living, where we are, in order to then open ourselves and humble ourselves to the truth in that moment. It's really not as complicated as we make it. So Mars is also becoming increasingly visible this season, highlighting our increasing struggles with and within duality. So the extent to which we can catalyze and make use of the creative life force that is polarity, the less engaged in the us versus them, me versus you, this or that dualistic thinking of duality, then we become empowered to simply make a choice, not a right versus a wrong choice, but a choice that is right for us based on our availability to feel our life force, which is, again, how much or how little of the tension of duality or tension of polarity we're able to reconcile and live. So, other notables in this Ingress chart is Venus trine Pluto retrograde. Pluto retrograde being on the part of fortune, which is giving an extra emphasis to the beauty and the blessings inherent in the deep transformations that are systemic, wide transformations that are possible when each of us engages heartfully in what is for us to engage in. Okay. Venus is also opposing Neptune retrograde. Chiron is trine Mars, which is quincunx and inconjunct the nodal axis, meaning Mars seemingly has no relationship with the nodal axis, which is very interesting and prescient considering we have really, our agency seems to be untethered from our evolutionary purpose. Also indicated by Chiron in Aries. We literally have exhausted our Aryan Martian agency from having gone too far outside of ourselves. We need to learn to receive all of what we've done. Again, this is a form of allowing ourselves to catch up with ourselves. The North Node in Taurus is asking us to do. The moon is in Leo here, applying to Ceres on Alphard. Fixed star Alphard is in the back of the lion, and it's the star of finding the courage to go our own way, to choose our own path, rather than default to outside sources, whether they be society or institutions that have been playing the role of surrogate parent, telling us what's best for us, how we should continue to seek convenience and a false pleasure, a false security, which has really been numbing our relationship with creation, with our life force, with the dynamism, inherent in polarity. So I see this period as a deep self-forgiveness for any lingering belief structures around our human condition being somehow deficient or unworthy. And that is the key to this season, is finding this self-forgiveness of where we've made ourselves not worthy, not enough in our humanness to receive our initiations, our blessings, the capacity that we've forgotten to really, really hold ourselves in these deep transformative spaces, and where we've forgotten that collaboration comes before partnering. Before we can truly partner with another, we need to learn to collaborate with our peers. Okay? So doing this and whatever we're doing will shift us into a level of availability for potentially deep transformations that we are being invited into, and to meet ourselves more honestly and nakedly than ever before. So again, Virgo is the sign of the initiate. We are all initiates on this journey, each one of us. And if we remember that, that is the beauty and the gift of this human earth plane. It's not something to wish that we weren't here. How did I get here? I never asked to be here. If we find ourselves saying that, which I know I've said to myself in the past more than once, how is that continuing to deny that I am a precious part of life? And how is that continuing to self-abnegate and not where I'm not willing to take responsibility for the choices that I've made in the past? That even if my head can't correlate how I chose to be here at this time on the planet during this whole crazy mess, that's showing me the limitations of my mind, which is super important now too. And two, it's showing me where I don't want to be humble enough to admit that I can't possibly know in my head, in my personality, all of the choices I've ever made, all of the choices that I ever will make, unless I am available to surrender into admitting that I cannot know everything. And to be assured then that I am guaranteed to know just what is for me to know at any moment. There's something around the beauty of Virgo is when we can surrender Venus trine Pluto into what I cannot know, which is humility. I literally am guaranteed that I will get information, gnosis, as it comes through in right proportion and right amount to all that I can handle right now in the moment. And that's Virgo too, attending to and presencing the moment. The more we are beautifully engaged, tenderly, and open and available innocently to the moment, the more that our truth will self-arise, and we don't have to grasp for it. We don't have to find all the ways in which we tell ourselves we are not worthy, which can be really in secret a way of avoiding getting at the truth. Innocently or unconsciously, but still a way of avoiding the truth, even though we might be telling ourselves that's really, really what we desperately want. So again, without going too much into more, this feels like it's pretty full. And again, I welcome your comments to whatever else you see in this chart. And again, please, thank you so much for watching, for listening, for receiving, and for doing whatever is in your path, your part, your role, your being to do during this time for yourself and in service for the rest of us, in so doing what is for you to do for yourself. Big blessings, everyone. Until next time.